Around 4 months before the production of All About Lily Chou-Chou, on April 1st, 2000, a message board website was released called Lilyholics. Shunji Iwai would use this website to tell this novel where the characters would have conversations on the message board, and he would leave articles and excerpts about a murder at this musician Lily Chou-Chou's concert. Despite being a fictional novel, other random real-life people were also able to participate in the story by messaging on the board for themselves. The real world and this internet world Shunji Iwai was creating started to blend together.
みんな演じてるっていう雰囲気があって分かりやすかったんですよ。何を書いていいのか分かんないんだけど、まだなんかみんなでお芝居してるみたいな感じしてたんだけど、だんだんそれがごちゃごちゃになってきて、なんか怖くなったっていうか、あまりにも演じている人と、それから岩井さんの書き込んでるそのキャラクターがこうシンクロしてるっていうか、不思議な感覚があって。
All About Lily Chou-Chou is a experimental, artsy, fartsy, beautiful, long, emotional, musical, tragic, and touching coming-of-age movie. It's a movie about 14-year-olds' emotions, the internet, and Lily Chou-Chou, which is crazy that this movie first premiered 4 days before 9/11 and holds up even better now than ever. This movie resonates with anyone who's been 14 before, with the relatability of strong adolescent feelings and escapism with the internet and beautiful music, which is how it went from 3K in the US box office to a cult letterbox warrior classic. When I first watched this movie, I was a lot more melancholy and used movies, music, and art to cope with this. And even though the out of order 3-act structure kind of messed me up and I had a hard time figuring out who was who, this movie was really touching with not only the story, but the personality the movie has of its own. With the way it's shot and how the music is the most beautiful thing ever, and not only the context of composing the movie, but even outside of it, when you're listening to it late at night getting teary-eyed. I love this movie so much that I don't care if I've said beautiful and touching too many times. I can't think of a piece of media that is as personally beautiful and touching as All About Lily Chou-Chou. Before Lily Chou-Chou, writer-director Shunji Iwai started his career directing music videos. And in 1995, his first feature-length film called Love Letter came out to critical and box office success. Iwai wrote an internet novel using the message board that I mentioned earlier, with the movie's plot being pretty similar and only little details and events being slightly different. Production began August 13th, 2000, and the movie starts with the messages about Lily Chou-Chou from the message board being typed out on screen. This is a trait that the movie takes to convey the characters' deeper emotions that they only share to the ether. What is the ether? It's basically just the message board website, but at the same time, it's the most complex main character of this movie. The ether is a safe haven for the characters, the only place that they can really be themselves. It's how the movie shows that life on the internet and real life is like Superman and Clark Kent, but the ether is also an aura, a vibe, and emotion from Lily Chou-Chou, the fictional pop star that is kind of the god of the movie. And the ether is her heaven. The Lily Chou-Chou music fans in this movie are the angels of the ether. And there are examples of them saying not to pollute the ether when someone does something negative. This could say something about the power parasocial relationships on the internet have. And I know I sound crazy saying Lily Chou-Chou is about God and angels, but stay with me. Because the opening of this movie is a long scene, about 5 minutes, of our main character, Yuichi, standing in this vast field of green, with messages of the ether going by at the same time. Shunji Iwai even said in an interview, for a kid living in a small town, 70 to 80% of his life looks like this. But he's getting all this information telling him he's supposed to be a hardcore urban. But this scene really shows the selling point of the movie, in my opinion, because before you even know what it's about, if you see this beautiful shot alongside the pretty, relaxing music and the stylish typography on the screen, this was the reason I first watched this movie. Viewing this movie for the first time in a completely silent, dark room with the visuals flashing in my eyes is a spiritual experience. But we go from seeing this boy standing in the field for about 5 minutes, lost in the ether, to cutting straight to the real world, where 14-year-old Yuichi and his friends are delinquents, robbing old people and stealing CDs. It becomes apparent that this isn't really the same Yuichi. None of the boys seem particularly thrilled or happy about any of this, or even really that close to each other as friends. It doesn't seem like this is what they really want to do. This, again, ties into the ether, because the main character later says himself he's a soulless body when he's not inside the ether. You can see this when in the midst of his zombie real world task, the ether starts to seep in when he sees a Lily poster that the owner lets him keep. It's big and inconvenient to carry. His two other friends think it's lame, but he stops and admires it for himself, not really caring. And this part is one of the most human and in control that Yuichi is outside of the ether. Because the real Yuichi is really known as Philia. When he gets home, he can finally escape the hell of the real world and hop on the ether. Yuichi is a nobody, but Philia, the site manager of Lily Philia, is where he is someone. And today he even meets a new Lily fan called Blue Cat. After this, we see Yuichi shoplifting the new Lily album. You would think that he would pay for the CD by the person that he respects the most, but the scene previous to this shows his delinquent friends instantly taking his money after a family friend gives him some. So this is more proof that in the real world, Yuichi is a slave working under this delinquent organization drained of everything, which is why he clings to Lily Chou-Chou, the only thing that he really has, so tightly. But he ends up getting caught and has his teacher sent in to grill him, but she nicely ends up buying the CD for him anyways. And here on the train back home, caught with his pants down, Yuichi has no choice and finally shares his passion with someone outside the ether. The album is called Arabesque, based off the Debussy song, which the movie cuts to a mysterious girl playing. Remember when I said Iwai used to make music videos before? Well, if you've watched any of his movies, it's pretty apparent that he takes composing and music very seriously. Claude Debussy's Arabesque is kind of a reoccurring side character in this movie, with Lily saying it was the first ether music. Which leads us to the soundtrack of this movie that is so special. With Iwai working with him before in previous projects, he hired Takeshi Kobayashi and vocalist Seilu. Their job was to not only make a soundtrack for the movie, but a real Lily Chou-Chou album hybrid. That makes this OST not just a good soundtrack to the movie, but a great album by itself. If you haven't listened to this album / OST, listen to it even if you think you've watched the movie a lot. Because even though I'm like 90% sure that this movie has more music than dialogue, this movie still does not do the OST full justice. Even despite the fact that the best scenes in this movie has either classical music or Lily Chou-Chou singing in the background. I don't think I can emphasize what a hard job it is to create the music of a fictional pop star that has this godlike pull on people's hearts, and with her music alone was able to carve out a whole new ethereal space. And this soundtrack more than perfectly takes Lily Chou-Chou from this movie and puts her in our world. If you still want to answer the question of what is the ether, the best way to visualize it is this soundtrack. The most popular track is Glide, with its crashing in intro, with the pretty and soft vocals, with this strong emotion of pleading and frustration. This whole thing is just so beautiful and touching. Back to the movie, the school calls in his mom and tells her that Yuichi shoplifted, and then unexpectedly, she starts freaking out and beating on him, with the irony being that Yuichi is a full-time delinquent, but even while his mom is beating on him, for this whole scene, he is silent, thinking about Lily instead. A really quirky part that I think is a good example of this movie's personality is the way home after Yuichi gets yelled at. It perfectly embodies the awkwardness of talking to your parents after you get in trouble. For about a minute, it's complete silence with Yuichi taking his bike and his mom going on the bus, just to end up riding on the back of Yuichi's bike, while classical music slowly gets introduced, all from a very zoomed in shot far away. And I don't know if this is on purpose, but from the far away shot, you can clearly see Yuichi's mom's actress with a smile and goofing off. But as soon as she gets closer to the camera, she goes to this distressed pregnant lady face, and it's great. Later that night, Yuichi gets a call from this intimidating boy named Hoshino. Thinking that Yuichi ratted on their delinquent gang because he got in trouble. So they invite Yuichi to this garbage dump and beat him up with some of the slowest and least convincing kicks ever. I'm not saying this is completely immersion breaking or they should have kicked him harder in real life, but I just find it really funny that in the behind the scenes you can see that they made these realistic cuts and scars for this crazy beating. While his goons are beating Hoshino, he finds his Lily CD and breaks it, all while they're forcing Yuichi to masturbate in front of them while throwing rocks at him. And if you didn't already know the rating of this movie, then this is a plot twist in of itself. Hoshino has the thinnest bit of remorse and tells them to stop, and they leave. After this, it shows Philia and Blue Cat talking about their true love for Lily, and this ending the first act of the movie. If you were confused while watching like I was my first watch, this movie is shot in a 3-act structure going from present day to past, back to present day, with the second act going back only about a year prior when Yuichi is 13 years old. Before I discuss the second act, I think it's a good time to point out the significance in Yuichi's age, 14. This age is important in the movie because when he's 13, the second act shows it was the beginning of the end, and all of present day scenes take place until the movie ends when he turns 15. This age is a lot more significant than just the most convenient age for an adolescent coming of age movie. In the behind the scenes making of Lily Chou-Chou, 14 years old seems to be the main idea of it. The making of Lily Chou-Chou is narrated by a completely different person, and it's kind of its own video essay with behind the scenes clips mixed in. She says, if there's an age that warrants any attention, it's 14. and recalls her own depressing feelings at this age. And 14 is the age where everything changes, which I can relate to so hard. I remember when I was 13 thinking about how my life had only been going up and up, and the school year I turned 14, it wasn't anything tragic or really serious. There was a switch that flipped and I started feeling a pensive sadness I had never experienced before for a few months. So this movie, saying that this is a prophecy that every 14-year-old faces, is really personally touching, not only to me, but probably a majority amount of people who watch this movie, considering that before this, I thought I was the only one until both directors of the movie and behind the scenes have the same experiences. And at the end of the behind the scenes, they ask random people on the streets of Japan, what color would your age 14 be? And this may be a cultural divide thing because a lot of the adults say they prefer their life now than 14. Maybe it's just me, but every adult you meet tells you to enjoy your teens while you're still young and how much their life sucks now. It's either I'm locally surrounded by miserable adults or this is a more common thing in the US. But this part in behind the scenes is really touching to me because it shows that even though I thought that life sucking when you're adult is as much as a fact and promise as the sky is blue, it shows to adolescents that if your life as a 14-year-old sucked, then it can get better. And the thesis of the behind the scenes is that the movie is a great portrayal of what a 14-year-old goes through with real-world emotional conflict and escapism of the internet and media. You're not alone. So with that said, I really recommend the making of Lily Chou-Chou that has an upload here on YouTube for the personal stuff and the behind the scenes. But getting to the second act, it shows us Yuichi's school life a year prior. He's a lot more talkative than how we first met him, but he's also still soft-spoken and shy. Here, we also see that Yuichi and his enemy Hoshino were once good friends, with Hoshino being the one to first introduce Yuichi to Lily Chou-Chou while at his house. Also while he's at his house, my favorite scene happens.
それからシャンプーとリンス、それがしゅうちゃんのだからそれ使ってね。
これですか。
それおばあちゃんの。
これですか。
それ私の。
これですか。
うん、それしゅうちゃんのだから。
はい。
This is probably a mid-joke in the context of a comedy movie, but with this movie being so sad, this part really shines as the only funny moment. Also, the conversation of individually pointing at every single one instead of just saying the blue one is really funny. Also here in the school slice of life, we meet the mysterious girl playing the arabesque song earlier, the prettiest girl in school, Kuno. But one day, on a whim, they decide to take a vacation to Okinawa as 13-year-olds. They are short on money and decide to get this money by pickpocketing, their first gateway into the world of delinquency. And while they're plotting, they see some level 10 delinquents already a step ahead of them. So when they take the money from them, it's kind of like money laundering if you really think about it. They have this really cool action scene, but it's really just like 10 13-year-olds running and screaming in the parking lot. But with this, they're able to embark to Okinawa, still 13 and by themselves somehow, but there's pretty girls at least, and a strange traveler. The movie creatively decides to have the actors themselves shoot the entire Okinawa part. This goes back to adding to the personality of the movie. Shunji Iwai said he did this to, quote, show the raw beauty of the island. And despite the fact that these 13-year-old boys are across the country with only hot girl tour guides supervising them, and with these expensive cameras, before they shot this, the actors had to practice by recording each other in the city of Japan. The most notable things and whole point of the Okinawa part is the strange traveler and Hoshino's character development. This weird traveler that ends up running into the characters so much that it's like he's following them shows up a few times during their trip, and it's actually pretty creepy at times. Like when he describes a strangler tree with a very scary vibe, he also ties in with Hoshino's character development. Because during this vacation, Hoshino goes through 2 near-death experiences. The first one is when he almost gets stabbed by a flying fish, which could be foreshadowing. And even more scary, the second one, he almost drowns in the ocean, where the traveler doesn't quite give him CPR, but almost kisses him. And on their way back, they see the weird traveler dead on the road. He apparently jumped out in front of the car. And all these horrifying moments coming one after another changes Hoshino. Which, besides the death itself changing Hoshino, this character is kind of a red herring. I've heard theories that this traveler is some supernatural curse going to Hoshino. There's really no other explanation for this strange traveler outside of that. You can see this on the boat. He grabs the money they stole and throws it into the ocean. He's so shaken up that he's acting on impulsive thoughts, or maybe he even has a new outlook on life from those near-death experiences. When he throws out the money, he's happy, and not too long after, the first day of school starts, where from here on out, Yuichi even says for himself, the world was gray. Hoshino is not the same as he was before Okinawa. The turning point of his character happens when a kid is bullying another student, and Hoshino throws a table at him, knocks him out, and pulls out a knife to cut off his hair. But it doesn't end there. Hoshino kind of becomes a masochist when he makes him strip naked and humiliates him while making him swim in this mud pool. Reminiscent of the scene where Yuichi goes from watching to being the one watched. After this, Hoshino became a ringleader, lord of delinquents, tasking people to do his bidding. And then it takes the viewer back to the present of age 14, now that we know the full scope of Hoshino's character. Hoshino not only represents the villain of the main character, but how during adolescence you'll see people change. Not to the degree of becoming a psychomasochist after seeing death in the eyes, but friends you once knew will change. They might become meaner, maybe even backstab you, or plain and simply not want to hang out with you anymore. Which again, when I was 14, that is the year that flipped a switch. Not only your friends change, but you change too. I lost a ton of bonds but strengthened many, which makes Hoshino's character and all about Lily Chou-Chou beautiful and touching to me. But the 3-act structure of the movie takes a 25-25-50 approach, with by far the third act being when it finally starts to get into high gear with its emotions, tragedy, and build up to the final climax. And the third act takes us right back to where it started, in the beautiful green field. This time with a deeper meaning and emotion behind the scene, making the beautiful fields even more beautiful. The only safe place outside the ether. We get introduced to this girl named Suda, who Hoshino is blackmailing into doing an inappropriate line of work for her age. And Yuichi and his boys are there to collect the majority of her earnings she gains. Yuichi is tasked with taking her home. Here they have a sad moment together. 2 beaten souls. Suda doesn't want the dirty money. Hoshino has completely worked her to the bone and broken her. I could be wrong on the intentions of this short segment, but when Suda runs into the water, as soon as she looks down to see her chest shown by the water, she shuts down, reminded of her demons once again. What makes this scene beautifully tragic is that Suda and Yuichi are in the same hell. Yuichi watches Suda do what he's holding back. Everyone in this movie is being grinded down until they eventually break. Yuichi says that his ether is running out, the only solace he has in this world. this blue cat of the Lilyholics board is the only one who Yuichi is himself with. Also in this act, we learn more about the arabesque piano girl, Kuno. She's bullied at school with a group of girls refusing to do the school show if she's the one playing the piano. Which, might I add, the actors in this movie are not only less experienced as early teenagers, but Kuno's actor had to learn a Debussy song with no piano experience. That's just an interesting fact. Anyways, they agree to do the show as long as Kuno's not playing the piano, and so they do an a cappella. But afterwards, they find out that Kuno was the one who composed the whole act. But before anything happens, we see that Yuichi has a crush on Kuno, and one of his classmates has a crush on Suda, and asks Yuichi to call her for him. And when Yuichi does later that night to tell her to meet his classmate on the school roof, this should be a sweet adolescent crush moment, but Suda's perception on men has been tarnished with what she's forced to do and doesn't trust the classmate at first. This conversation shows the effects of Hoshino's tyranny and what it has on Suda's personal life, but the significance of this conversation shows that Suda only feels comfortable with Yuichi, and we'll see more proof of this later, but before that, Yuichi is tasked to lead Kuno to an abandoned factory that Hoshino's family once owned before going out of business. This shows the personal life of Hoshino that could have led to this villainy. Earlier in Act 2, he would talk about how he's misunderstood as the smartest guy in school, and the boys would talk behind his back saying that his mom only invites people to stay over and feeds them so that they can stay friends with Hoshino, giving sympathy to such an evil character, and showing that even though he causes most people's struggle and pain, it comes from his own depression, with the Okinawa trip completely making him go crazy. But maybe there is a soul clearly visible inside of him. Either way, Kuno goes into the factory, and we see as Yuichi slowly starts to break down, because in the factory, we see this group of boys sent by the girls turn on all the looms to mask the sound as they violate her, all while the arabesque song plays in the background. And for the first time, Yuichi cracks everything that has happened up to this moment. He's been beaten and battered himself, and has witnessed even more, for everything to come spilling out all at once. Throughout this movie, Yuichi has been an unemotional, notably repressed husk, holding in everything. But finally, almost as a relief, he burst. For the one he admired the most, Yuichi's ether is crumbling. But later, Suda and Yuichi are having fun getting dinner with one of the men's wallets, where Suda says that she turned down the classmate because she feels she's not good enough for him. Yuichi says that he could have saved her from this, from Hoshino, and looked out for her. But Suda says,
せっかく握らせるチャンスだったら
あんたが私を守ってよ。今ちょっとかっこよかったよ。熱くなっちゃってさ。でもあんた黒さんなんでしょ。デブになったらさ、仕事しなくて済むと思う？あ、そうだ。モヒカンにしよっか。
showing how Hoshino has crumbled her confidence and self-worth, and how Yuichi is the only person who can give her a slight bit of comfort. But once again, as soon as she's comfortable with Yuichi, a slap in the face reminds her of the torment she's in, with the man coming back to get his wallet and paying for their meal. On the bus home, similar to the part in the first act, Yuichi puts her onto Lily Chou-Chou when pushed a bit, and Suda's last ever parting words with Yuichi is saying Kuno will be okay. After this is another part of the movie where all the characters' emotions start to boil up. Kuno bravely shows up to school with buzzed hair. Yuichi pleads for help to the ether, saying he's stuck in an endless loop of depression. Even Blue Cat knows this exact feeling, and in a moment of revelation, they use their love for Lily as a method to keep going. Philia and Blue Cat are both in a moment of suicidal depression, but were able to overcome it with their passion for Lily Chou-Chou. Yuichi, Hoshino, and Suda, all in a melting pot of feelings, are being released at this moment. Yuichi has a new hope for life with Blue Cat essentially saving him. Hoshino has no one, with his gang even plotting to kill him, but he saved Yuichi while also being the doom of him. None of them know it, but Yuichi's greatest nightmare is who he values the most in the ether. Hoshino is bottling up a monster inside of him, but then it cuts to the only other main character we have left. You would think that the light Yuichi shines would be enough hope. You would think that the gorgeous view or the beautiful kindness of strangers and the kites would be enough. For Suda, what seems like a new hope and new peak of happiness, she commits suicide. Caused by Hoshino. One thing Shunji Iwai did perfectly with Suda's character was convey the feeling of yearning to save her and wanting her to deserve better. You want so much more for her, especially when you see her flying the kites happily before she ends up committing suicide, but the hopeless tragedy of her strength giving out at the final rep is great writing but horrible for the viewer. A reasonable theory I have is maybe Suda had unrequited love towards Yuichi. She turns down the guy who liked her and says Yuichi looks out for her, but she always seems quite sad to bring up that Yuichi likes Kuno. After all, Yuichi was her only light in her dark world, and maybe this uneven divide was just the one tiny thing that led her to break. These three characters yearn for the feeling of flying free through the sky, unbounded by their shackles. In an interview, Shunji Iwai said, "Women are always tough, and I feel like they are much stronger than me at least. In Japan, there was a tradition for a woman to leave the family and go into an entirely new village, alone, and marry into an entirely new family and have children there. So if you think about that tradition, I guess the women in Japan have always been conditioned to be tough." After all the events that have culminated, at school, Yuichi throws up in the middle of class and says there's this strange aura in his head. And he shows the Lily Chou-Chou CD to the teacher, broken by Hoshino earlier in the first act. Then it cuts to Hoshino finally letting everything explode all at once. A relatable feeling that adolescents carry of stress that torments you locked inside your own skin. Both Yuichi and Hoshino have a burden of loneliness that swells inside of them. Hoshino's meltdown is almost a plea to be free and roam in the sky. The only control he has in his own life is that of others. But it all comes to an abrupt end, because we are at the climax of the movie, the Lily Chou-Chou concert. At the concert, two fans are arguing over Lily Chou-Chou's band before she broke up and ended up going solo, which is a great segue for one of the most impactful and greatest scenes of this movie. The other fan puts on headphones and starts listening to the music, where once again, you can really tell that Shunji Iwai was indeed a music video director and still uses aspects from that in all his movies all the way up to today. The basic lyrics of "I see you, you see me," while it first shows a bright green apple, that stands out more than anything else in the crowd, then shockingly revealing Hoshino. And at first, with them meeting at such a vulnerable place, Hoshino seems to act more friendly. He's still on a power trip and trades out Yuichi's ticket, but this interaction reminds me more of a younger and older brother dynamic, while the part with the two Lily fans oddly ends in a scuffle between the two, polluting the ether, you could say. Hoshino hands him the green apple and wants Yuichi to get a Coke for him and tell him if someone walks up to him because of the apple. But the tragedy behind this is that Blue Cat told Philia he would have a green apple so they could meet up and identify each other. The plot twist of this movie that Blue Cat and Philia are Hoshino and Yuichi, which you may or may not probably easily solve this watching this for the first time. I definitely didn't. I had a hard time telling if Yuichi was Philia or Blue Cat. But watching this for the first time opens up the floodgates with the reveal that makes this tragic story even more tragic. The tale of being best friends with your abuser is so horribly sad, and showing that Yuichi really has no escape no matter where he turns. The ether was his only solace in this world. It was the only escape from Hoshino, who has ruined everyone's life. And this concert is when he finds out that there is nothing for him. He has no Blue Cat, no Suda, and maybe not even the ether. The ether is at critical risk right now. The worst person in Yuichi's life has infiltrated his safe space and throws him for a loop. But even though Lily Chou-Chou is the only place he finds happiness, it's almost like Lily Chou-Chou was the start of his crumbling. But you really don't see this physically affect Yuichi that much yet. He still goes to get the Coke. And here, by far the biggest mystery in this movie, still 24 years later, happens in less than 30 seconds. When he's buying the Coke, a strange girl walks up to him, eyeing him and the green apple. But if Blue Cat wanted to meet up with Philia using a green apple to identify each other, then who is this girl still watching him as he walks away? The movie kind of throws you off balance right after you're already overwhelmed. It has to be impossible for these two main characters not to be the two main characters of the ether, Philia and Blue Cat, right? This just seems like a complete curveball from Iwai just to keep you on edge for the rest of the finale. Which is why I like this Reddit user's explanation for the scene. The strongest point I think they have is when they say this scene occurs right after we see the big fight between the other Lily Chou-Chou fans. Remember, this is Yuichi's place of community. It's not supposed to be like his violent school life, and yet it is. And now we have this girl staring at him, making him feel uncomfortable. Like he doesn't fit in, and he's realizing perhaps that this isn't the community he hoped it was, leaving his whole support system betrayed. I really like this theory for the strange girl because I think it's the most common explanation the director Shunji Iwai would take. Shunji Iwai once said in an interview, all these entertainment companies, music and movies send their content to everyone, not just city kids, but also small town kids. I thought that might break the balance in their life. And like I said earlier, this scene is a curveball to break not only the viewer's balance, but Yuichi's. This scene is where Yuichi loses everything, the definition of breaking the balance in his life at this exact moment. And like what the Reddit user said, he's been leaning on Lily Chou-Chou, Blue Cat, and the ether just for it all to give out at once. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself by saying that, because if the ether was already crumbling, if he already felt betrayed now, then when he tries to find Hoshino after getting a Coke, just to watch him crumble his ticket and go in without him, locking him out of the concert, then this moment is the catalyst that completely breaks the scale and forever changes the balance of Yuichi's life. Yuichi stands there for hours until the concert is done. Still no way to get in. clutching on the green apple as he watches Lily Chou-Chou from the big screen outside. Which is kind of a shocking reveal because before this, we never really see Lily Chou-Chou's face and think of her as this divine being with high regard, but it's just what a pop singer's face and music video would be. But I do think that maybe the wings in the end of this music video could be hinting at this divine pedestal. As the show ends, Yuichi stands there, waiting for Hoshino. But all Hoshino does is take the apple and leave. Maybe Yuichi was still holding in his wits, hoping for an apology of some kind. But he received absolutely nothing, with nothing left to lose. So the soft-spoken, silent Yuichi that we know, in the loudest and most publicly expressive he is in the whole movie, yells out that Lily is here, creating a crowd of fans. But this was all a lure for Hoshino, for Yuichi to quite literally stab him in the back. As Hoshino slowly falls to the ground, he holds eye contact with Yuichi, someone who has never stood up for himself this whole movie, showing the effects of what happens when there's too much pressure to contain. Yuichi kills Hoshino. He's confirmed dead. All Yuichi has is a knife in the green apple, soiling the ether forever as his final goodbye to Lily Chou-Chou. And the last few minutes of the movie shows Yuichi learning the piano and even rudely tricks the audience into thinking he committed suicide. But really, he's just contemplating with all these overwhelming ideas, the overwhelming feelings of a 14-year-old. But Yuichi turns 15. He isn't doing too well at school with a crash-landing decline, his teacher says. And that strange aura in his head earlier is now gone. And the movie ends with Yuichi silently watching Kuno play arabesque. As the credits roll, it shows messages back from the Lilyholics board over our three most important characters, Yuichi, Suda, and Hoshino. In case you were wondering, the Lilyholics board is still up on the internet to this day, and both English speakers and Japanese speakers are still actively posting on it to this day. If you remember, at the beginning of this video, I said the movie only gained around $3,000 in the US box office, being a complete flop, but being highly successful in Japan. Shunji Iwai says, "I personally feel that people are the same no matter where you go. And I never have the experience where you take the same film to a different country and people receive it differently. I think people generally tend to receive films the same, no matter what nationality they may be." And the cult classic this movie has become among young Americans today, and the Lilyholic message boards still in use 25 years later by both cultures, proves this statement to be true. So what is the meaning of this movie? Stab anyone who's a bad person and you don't like? I still don't quite know myself. And I would love to hear you comment just any thoughts you may have in general related to Lily Chou-Chou or not if you've made it this far. Because the only thing that we really know for sure about this movie is that this whole movie is a great depiction of what it's like to be 14. That anyone from any part of the world can relate to this movie. It shows the raw emotions these teenagers have from bullying, sexual assault, and suicide, all while using a experimental, artsy-fartsy, beautiful, long, emotional, musical, tragic, and touching coming-of-age movie.